Hi, welcome to Almost Cooperstown.
I'm Mark.
And this is Gordon, and we love talking about baseball. Here we are deep into August now, and this is episode 14. And this week we're here to actually talk about, I think in some ways, what's really considered the pinnacle achievement for a single season for a batter, which is winning the Triple Crown. And yes, it's kind of been tarnished like the last couple of years or in recent history just because people don't look at RBIs the same way that they used to. It's not nearly as valued a statistic, but nobody's ever won the Triple Crown by accident.
Yes. And there have been 23 perfect games in Major League history, but there have only been 14 Triple Crowns in the modern era. We're not going back before that.
Yeah, I mean, now granted, you're talking about, a single game versus an entire season there, but it's still... winning the Triple Crown it's something that the fact that Miguel Cabrera won it in 2012 is really stunning because I honestly thought it would have never happened again.
And nobody has won a Triple Crown in the National League since 1937.
Which is weird.
Right, there's been in the American League since then, but yeah, I
don't know why that would be because you couldn't attribute that. It's not like DHs have been winning it like crazy.
Yelich came close a couple years ago.
Guys have come close, but
a lot of those.
And it's certainly not something where you could argue like, oh, having the pitcher in the lineup affects your chances to win the Triple Crown. That doesn't really track.
No. But one of the things that I found was most interesting about Triple Crown stats is about the RBI itself, and that is that RBI was not even an official stat until 1920. There's that season again.
But yeah, I know guys have won it before then. So how does that exactly work? Because I didn't even know because it's I thought that they've been tracking RBI since the beginning of the modern era.
Right. So before 1920, they would go back into game accounts, which weren't always terribly accurate. And you think about how they kept track in box scores and reports of games. And so they went back and found that in the modern era, in 1901, Napoleon Lajoie of the Philadelphia A's hit 426, had 14 home runs, dead ball era folks. And 125 RBIs, and that led the league in each of those three categories. So he posthumously was awarded the
Triple Crown. I mean, hitting 426 in a season's pretty impressive. I mean, again, you would argue that doing all of those things, he did win the Triple Crown. It's just you never know if you're going to go back that far to reconstruct game accounts.
But he didn't get an award, I bet, right? I didn't go back and look this up. Nobody said, "Hey, congratulations, you won the Triple Crown."
Is he even in the Hall of? Is he?
Yeah.
So I guess to me, what would be the pinnacle if he's in the Hall of Fame and now in the Hall of Fame he's considered a Triple Crown winner? That's to me what would make
it
a
great
official.
Point. And in fact, the second Triple Crown winner, same status in the dead ball era, 1909. Everybody's favorite Ty Cobb of the Detroit Tigers hit 377, which was not that much above his career average of 367, by the way.
To have a career average of 367.
He had 9 homers and 107 RBIs.
9 home runs led the league. People will call that very boring baseball.
So, and the last one of the dead ball era is not officially recognized as a Triple Crown, and we'll talk about this player in just a few minutes. But
wait, no. I want to talk about this player now. So wait, how is he not officially recognized, but he won a Triple Crown?
Well, remember I talked to you about the accounts of the game were not that accurate. So I guess people had erasers and stuff, and Honus Wagner apparently won the RBI title at the time in 1912. But Heine Zimmerman, and actually was the first of 2 Heinies to play in the National League, but we won't talk about Heine minutia in this episode. Heine Zimmerman led the league in all 3 categories except for RBIs at the time, and then they found later on 4 RBIs.
What, somebody hid the ballots or something?
Well, George Sisler actually had 256 hits, for the longest time, and then 30, 40 years ago, they found a hit, and now he has 257 for the year that he led the league in hits. So they find things sometimes when they go looking. Yeah, so they found 3 hits, and Heine Zimmerman actually ends up winning the Triple Crown. If you go back to, Baseball Reference and you look at the stats,
that 1912 season, he was the official Triple Crown winner.
But again, didn't get awarded. They weren't awarding it then, and at the time there was even controversy. So people apparently still argue about this. We can believe that.
I have to imagine that was definitely the most important thing that happened that year.
After 1920, the players become players that we've heard of. They're not that you haven't heard of Ty Cobb and Nap Lajoie, but this is now the official. You have Triple Crowns. So go ahead. Who's the first Triple Crown winner after the?
Well, the first Triple Crown winner, obviously, a Cardinal, who there's a few of them, actually, which is kind of weird. But Rogers Hornsby. Yeah, I mean,
the Raja.
To win it, to do the Triple Crown twice within like a couple seasons of each other is pretty impressive. And like those seasons he put together are crazy. Like
he had 400, by the way, both times.
Yeah. 400 with almost 40 home runs both seasons and almost 150 RBIs in both seasons. That's carrying your team. That's a pretty good season.
So in 1933, the National League did have a Triple Crown winner as well. Chuck Klein of the Philadelphia Phillies.
Now, you said that these are people, I do not know who Chuck Klein is.
A Hall of Fame player. By the way, all the guys that won these Triple Crowns are Hall of Fame players. Except for Miguel Cabrera. But that's just a matter of time.
Just a matter of time. And it's just hard for me to believe that, like, winning a Triple Crown is just so hard to do that it seems unlikely that like a guy could be good enough for one season to win the Triple Crown, but then also wouldn't put together like a Hall of Fame type career.
And that's exactly right, because I read where 80 times in the 120 years since 1900, guys have won 2 of the 3 and didn't win the third 80 times,
which
that's a lot.
That's a lot, but it's like I guess to me that's even more likely why it would be a Hall of Famer, because like you might have an individual season. There's probably a lot of guys that had an individual season where they got 2 of 3, but then they never got close again. But like if you have to be a Hall of Fame type player to put up the types of numbers to get close every single year until finally one year it just kind of gets all put together for you.
Well, and Chuck Klein had that year, but he also had a Hall of Fame career. Now in 1933. Jimmy Fox, who was also the guy who won.
So there were 2 Triple Crowns in the same year.
In the same season. That's correct. That's the only time that's happened, by the way.
Oh, man, that just really looks bad on both of the rest of those leagues' hitters. Like, you just get both of you, there's just a Triple Crown in both leagues. Not a good look.
So Jimmy Fox, who's one of the answers to the trivia question of guys in the field around in baseball that have won back-to-back MVPs, because he was the first guy to do it. I think he won the first MVP itself. But he won in 1933, hitting .356 with 48 homers and 163 RBIs. But he should have won in 1932, and he was beaten out of it by Dale Alexander, who's a player I have no knowledge of. And apparently Dale Alexander ended up only having 454 plate appearances. And for all of us that really follow baseball, you're supposed to have, to qualify for the batting title, 3.1 plate appearances for each one of your team's games. Point being, if you play 160 games times 3, that's 480. So you play anyway. He didn't have enough plate appearances to qualify by today's standard, and so some people go back, like ESPN, and give Fox the batting average crown because he had 365
like
average.
Like another retroactive awarding of the Triple Crown, essentially.
But how about this season? He hit 365 with 58 homers and 169 RBIs.
Yeah, that's a pretty good. Yeah, I feel like you should win the Triple Crown. You should for that season. Even if you didn't actually do it, they should just give it to you.
But he didn't end up winning in 1932. He won in 1933.
And I mean, then you go into like, obviously you get kind of into the slightly more modern era of Triple Crown winners, where it's just like, it's a lot of the greats, where Gehrig won it in 34. And then I don't know the next guy that won it.
Ducky Wucky Medwick?
Wait, excuse me?
Well, remember we talked about Joe Medwick, and they called him Ducky Medwick, and then some people even called him Ducky Wucky Medwick, and apparently this was a big guy who would just beat the tar out of you or something. I don't know, but that was his name, was Ducky Medwick, was really his nickname.
Well, I mean, he won a Triple Crown, so he must have been pretty good at baseball.
As a Hall of Fame player, and the last guy again in the National League to have won the Triple Crown.
Interesting, because then obviously after that season, you have Ted Williams winning his 2 Triple Crowns.
Yeah, well, here's the thing about Ted Williams, and you got to think about it. 1942, he wins the Triple Crown. Nice season, 356 with 36 homers, 137 RBIs.
That's what we're going to call a nice season.
Goes to the war for the next 3 years. Doesn't play baseball in 1930, 43, 44, and 45. Comes back in 46. Just doesn't win the Triple Crown, but decides he'll win it in 1947 after he's been away.
So he lost,
3 years of his career.
And in prime of his career. Yeah. He could have easily won at least one more.
Hard for me to say anything. If you look at his career ops, Ted Williams, there goes the greatest hitter who ever lived, as far as I'm concerned. I think Ted Williams still deserves that moniker. And
certainly you could even say it would be even more likely if he had been one of the few to stay behind that he would have won the Triple Crown, because he would have played against reduced competition in those years too.
Yeah, that's right. And they had it when he was gone. He was the competition that was reduced.
And I mean, then you have kind of, I think this would kind of be like the last of like, I guess the classic era guys in my mind. It always surprises me that he played so late into the 50s because I think of him as more of like, I guess in my mind, the elder era of baseball, but Mantle won his in 56.
No, he was definitely late 50s into the 60s. Amazing player, fast, terrific ball player. A surprise sometimes that he only won the one. And then the next guy, and I like this story about Frank Robinson, who's just one of the all-time greats for so many reasons. The first African-American manager after his amazing playing career, but he played for the Reds in 1965, and the Reds decided to trade him because they felt he was an old 30. So they traded him to the Baltimore Orioles after the season, and he goes into Baltimore and he wins the Triple Crown.
Ooh, that's not a good look for your organization.
Yeah.
You're gonna be wearing that egg on your face for a while.
So that's a little retribution probably there, a little get back at you. And then you've got Yastrzemski, Carl Yastrzemski, not Mike. I don't know, Mike's his nephew or a grandson or something like that, playing for the Giants now.
Oh yes,
Mike Yastrzemski, and he had the last Triple Crown winner until Miggy.
So, I mean, I guess for something that's always been interesting to me, has there been anybody that's ever been like just missed? Because like you even said yourself, there have been 80 guys that have had like 2 of 3 categories, but has anybody been like that close?
Yeah, so actually that was something we talked about before the show because you were interested in this, and I did find a guy, and he ended up being the American League president later in life. I think Al Rosen of the Cleveland Indians led the league. Al Rosen,
never heard of him.
Not a Hall of Famer, had a short career, I think 10 or 11 seasons, and not really. That was his year. Okay, so this is the year that he had.
It almost reinforces the point I was making. Like this guy had that one magical season, and it still wasn't enough for him.
So he led the league in home runs, 44 homers, and 145 RBIs. So
pretty good year,
and far more than he ever hit in any other season. So this was his, like the most amazing. And it's almost too bad that he didn't win it because it would have been a story unto itself since would be the only guy that's not in the Hall of Fame and doesn't deserve to be in the Hall of Fame. But he finished second in batting average to Washington's Mickey Vernon, another great Hall of Fame player, by the slimmest of margins, 337 to 336. The batting race.
That's painful.
Yeah.
That's like I gotta feel like he's like the Andres Galarraga of the Triple Crown.
Oh, I like that. I like that. The batting race of that year, and this is a great story, right? Came up to Rosen's last at bat of the year, and the last day of the season, Vernon goes 2 for 4, and Rosen goes 3 for 5. In the last at bat, the Tigers, who were leading the game 7-1, played their infield excessively deep, inviting Rosen to lay down, which would have been an easy gift bunt single. As quoted in Russell Snyder's definitive Cleveland Indian Insider Encyclopedia, Al Albert was pitching, and he was kind of wild. In my last trip to the plate, I figuring I needed one more hit to pass Vernon. I went to a 3-2 count, and I knew I had to swing at whatever Aber threw. Rosen then fouled off 4 consecutive 3-2 pitches before hitting a high chopper to third baseman Jerry Proddy. It was a bang-bang play at first. The umpire called me out. He was right. I was out, and that was that. Had Rosen been safe, he would have finished with a batting average of 3.372 to the Vernon's 3.371, and Rosen would have won the Triple Crown. Now, that's a just miss.
That's just, God, that's got to be so painful. Yeah, he really is the Galarraga of the Triple Crown.
He did win the MVP that year.
I mean, yeah, he still gets the MVP, but the Triple Crown, especially for him, would have been such a more meaningful achievement in some respects. It's such a much more like, he's just an MVP winner, not a Triple Crown winner.
Yeah. But in his case, I don't think that would have been enough to get him out of almost. I don't think he's a Hall of Fame guy.
No,
even with the Triple Crown.
Even if he had won the
that
Triple Crown,
would have made him that anomaly because I don't. As you say, it looks like if you win the Triple Crown, there's almost certainty that you're going to be in the Hall of Fame.
Because I mean, there's even guys like look at a guy that we talked about. I think on last time or recently was Christian Yelich, who almost won it 2 years ago. I mean, he was pretty close considering
it was like the last week of the season. He was, he had the home run tie for the lead, and he just lost.
He missed by 2 home runs and an RBI.
Yeah.
And then there's. I mean, like I guess it's kind of hard. Like there was that year back, I think like 2010, where Pujols, he led the league in homers and RBIs, but he missed batting average by like a somewhat significant margin.
And it happened rather regularly, right? So if you go, kind of down the line in the year after that, 11, Matt Kemp was missing the batting average stat because Reyes hit 337 for the Mets and he hit 324, but he led the league with 39 homers and 126 RBIs.
Yeah, and I think it's just kind of, and then there's like, I mean, then obviously you have a year like '09 where you have Teixeira, because like you pulled this out and we talked about it, because like Teixeira led the league in homers and RBIs with 39 homers and 122 RBIs, but he was just a little short on the average. He had 292, and Mauer kind of hit 365.
So it wasn't like he just missed it. And by the way, looking at Teixeira, I did not realize that guy has 5 Gold Gloves, 409 career homers, and 1,298 RBIs, and a 50.6 career WAR in 14 years. So, and only played 15 years of games in one of those, so 13 by our standard. The point is that the 268 average is what kills him, because that makes him an almost guy. But everything else in that Hall of Fame here with the 5 Gold Gloves.
Where were the Gold Gloves?
First base?
He was the first. I thought he was a catcher for some reason.
No, first baseman.
He's a first baseman. Yeah, I feel like nowadays he's really close. He'd be a borderline guy.
But the 268, yeah.
The 268 really hurts him because like he was a good defender, but he wasn't like,
well, 5 Gold Gloves makes him
a great defender.
Certainly one of the better ones of all time.
I mean, yeah, I guess he's a guy you could really make an argument for. I guess he is a true almost guy.
Yeah. Again, you can't have that. We still value batting average enough that hitting 268 is, that's why you don't get in. And here's a guy who has possibly the most interesting player on this is Ryan Howard, right? Who missed the stat, missed it with a 251 batting average, but he hit 48 homers with 146 RBIs in 2008. I think Ryan Howard is possibly got the lowest career WAR of any MVP, because he won an MVP. I think it's like 14.7.
And it doesn't surprise me at all, because you had those couple of years. There was the '06 season where he was unbelievable. I think we actually have that on here. Yeah,
that's the one. Yeah,
because he had the '08 season, but then he also had the '06 season
where he hit a higher average.
He had 313 with 58 homers and 149 RBIs. But the problem is for that one season where he hit 313, there were a whole lot of seasons in a row where he hit like 220.
Yeah. It just surprises me that.
And he played terrible defense.
An MVP, well, that's how you have a 14-7 career WAR in that longest career. Manny Ramirez was right there in '08. Actually, he lost the RBI crown by 9 to Josh Hamilton. But
I feel like that's the kind of season that gets lost because it got split between Boston and LA when he got traded.
Right.
So like when that happens, and because of the way they split your stats, then people don't necessarily realize the actual season he put together.
Right. You probably wouldn't have gotten credit if he had won in the first place.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
which really isn't fair, but I understand why, because I don't know how you track that. Because if you hit, let's say like you played a quarter, half to almost 2/3 of the season in the American League and then transfer over. Like, it's not really fair that you could carry in a higher batting average and home runs when the rest of your competition now for the Triple Crown never faced those pitchers.
I would say that it's a league award, so you really can't, if you get traded during the season, that ruins your chance.
It's just an unfortunate reality.
Yeah. And who would do that, right? Who would trade a guy in the middle of a Triple Crown season? I guess his name would be Manny Ramirez.
Yeah, I guess Manny Ramirez.
Matt Holliday of the Rockies actually had a terrific 2007 season, but he lost the home run crown by 14.
Yeah, exactly. That's a pretty big gap.
Wasn't just missed or anything. Andrew Jones, which category he would not compete in, but he had 51 homers and 128 RBIs.
Yeah, but he probably hit like 260.
Yeah, and that would be 263. You'd be right. So A-Rod came close in '02. So he had 57 homers, 142 RBIs. Wow!
But then he had he
only hit 300.
Yeah, and Manny hit 349.
Yeah. Didn't just miss it.
And that's what's really hard about it. I think that because it would be very atypical for a guy to hit for the high enough average while hitting the home runs. That just usually doesn't happen.
So now let's say that in this abbreviated 60, well, it won't even be 60 game season, it appears, they finish the season and somebody has the most homers, the most RBIs, and the highest batting average in the league. Does he get credit for winning a Triple Crown?
I don't think he should.
Yeah, I tend to not want to penalize teams for winning a world championship, but I think I would penalize a player.
The same way, like if some guy had like the lowest ERA for a single season as like a starting pitcher, I wouldn't count it nearly the same because it's too different.
Right. So if Kershaw walks 2 guys all year, he doesn't go down in the record books of having the lowest walks yielded.
Yeah, because it's like you had to play a third of the game that everybody else did. So like I feel like cumulative season statistics like that you kind of unfortunately have to throw out the window.
So if you hadn't thought about it before, you heard it here first, folks. There will be no Triple Crown awarded this year. we have basically thrown.
We have declared it to be so.
That is great, but it's certainly something that I'll keep paying attention to. I am not one of those people that believes the RBI is as irrelevant a stat as some would have you say. Yes, it does matter about how good your team is, and they have to get on base for you to drive them in. But my opinion,
you still have to get those
situation,
hits.
right? So and our Mets are struggling with runners in scoring position, and that aspect of the game, hitting under pressure when there's somebody in scoring position, is important to perform in those situations. That is a measure of that.
Good, having a lot of RBIs is not necessarily a mark of how good a player you are, but good players have lots of RBIs.
Yes, that's well put. That's well put.
But there's nobody that's had like 70 RBIs in a season, and everybody's being like, "Oh, this guy, he's an unbelievable hitter."
Okay, so last question for you. If you were going to pick one player in each league to win the Triple Crown next season, who would it be?
Trout.
Yep.
Mookie.
I would probably say the same. Those are the first two players that came to my mind.
Mookie has the power to do it, and he could hit for the average, and he plays on a team where it's the thing that makes it hard.
The ballpark's going to be hard for him to lead the league in home runs.
But he also then does get to play the rest of the NL West, which you do get to hit a lot of home runs in those ballparks.
And he goes to Colorado and plays a bunch of games against those guys.
Yeah, so Arizona ball flies out of Arizona. There's a lot of home runs hit at the San Francisco Stadium, and I mean, if Bartolo Colon can hit a home run in San Diego, I'm pretty sure Mookie can hit plenty there.
The thing I wanted to mention before we sign off is that there's a Triple Crown in pitching as well. That is not anything that anybody really talks about. If you have the most wins,
most strikeouts, and the lowest ERA,
highest winning percentage, which is just really
that's such an uninteresting
ERA and highest winning percentage.
Especially because you're already counting the wins, so it feels like you're just counting wins twice.
Yeah, maybe it's strikeouts.
Strikeouts would at least be more interesting.
Maybe it's strikeouts, ERA, and winning percentage.
Yeah, if it's strikeouts, ERA, to me it should be strikeout. The problem with winning percentage is like, what if you have a guy that's 8-0? Is he necessarily the better pitcher if he's a starter than the guy that was like 16-4?
Yeah, well, they might say minimum of X decisions a lot of times. So they'll over the course of the season, it'll keep going up that you've had to have based on the amount of games your team has played.
I think the issue with the pitching Triple Crown is that
it's just not cool.
It's just not cool.
It's just not cool.
It's just not cool. And like, yeah, like you could have strikeouts, but like you're gonna tell like you're gonna say that like Greg Maddux could never win a pitching Triple Crown because he's never gonna get enough.
Yeah,
strikeouts.
And it's gonna be harder to have that kind of a stat hold up in the long run because we don't evaluate wins and things the way that they used to be for pitchers. So it's a silly stat.
And honestly, wins are a really frustrating statistic to track because you could have a guy that would totally dominate. Like Jacob deGrom would probably get ERA and strikeouts every single season and then lose because the Mets cannot ever keep a lead for him or get one.
But there is, a Triple Crown for the pitchers, but nobody cares. So.
Yeah, nobody cares. Thanks for listening. Subscribe to our podcast on your favorite platform.
And you can follow us on Twitter at AlmostCoop.